here. It's travelled all the way. Thank you very much, Cory.
My pleasure. This is Shelter. When I hear Shelter from the Storm, I wish I'd written it. It's one of those songs you sing too loud in the car that you feel in your stomach. Or that poem I read by learning the names of flowers in Irish and Glencolkill. Or the one about the whirling exit of a boat leaving St. Kilda. A beautiful poem gathers you into it, takes you out of yourself, makes you better. You enter it by back doors and windows, through keyholes, down chimneys with the drafts and the rattles. Stepping over screeching floorboards and stair treads, you hold your breath. You know its perfect lines are taut enough to bear the weight of your own thoughts landing like crows, fit enough to offer them canvas, stave. You wander the poet's shadowed house, make yourself a cup of tea, get to know your host better. You recognise in his face a cousin, brother, angel, teacher, and you give yourself over to the teaching. You are slow to leave, but wary of outstaying your welcome, you gather yourself off the floorboards, hoping there is some dust in your pocket, and then down the line you'll find it in the lint, the memory of all you've ever learned. Come in, it'll say, I'll give you shelter from the storm.
Well done, Cory. I have to say this poem caused me trouble. And the trouble it caused me was because I'm a Bob Dylan fan. And one of my favourite albums is Blood on the Tracks from whenever it was in the 70s. And Shelter from the Storm is one of the best songs in that. It's an absolutely fantastic song to listen to because it's just full of disjointed images. So the idea we have sometimes that songs and poetry should all make sense and should follow each other. Songs like that, and I'm thinking of some of, say, Graceland by Paul Simon, it has the same thing, jumping around with strange juxtaposition of ideas, words and images. And sometimes if I write a poem like that and bring it into LitLab, they get out about it, you know, and say, that doesn't make sense. But Bob Dylan sometimes doesn't make sense, and Paul Simon sometimes doesn't make sense. So I was biased towards Shelter from the Storm from the very beginning, and I came to the meeting with Mairead wondering, what did she think? And she had it in her top 10 as well, so I said, fine. It's not just because I'm a Dylan fan. Yeah, I think it's great, and I think the name Shelter, it's a perfect name for it. You know, sometimes people get hung up too much on names for poems. And the simplicity of expression in the first stanza, I think, just draws you in. It just tells you as it is. When I hear Shelter from the Storm, I wish I'd written it. I mean, it's one of those songs you sing too loud in the car, which it is, that you feel in your stomach, and then she moves off straight away to other poems and brings in the poem about the names of flowers in Irish and Glencolkill, which you may or may not know, but it doesn't matter if it doesn't exist, I don't know. If it does, it's fine, we know what she's talking about. And it's a wonderful thing to go from Bob Dylan to Glencolkill and then to St. Kilda. That's great as well. So I think there's a great craft in that that sometimes you don't see because it's so carefully crafted. And then in the second stanza, she decides to tell us about beautiful poems. What does a beautiful poem do? Now the danger with that is abstraction, really, I think. If you're going to write about what a poem does, the danger is you fall into using abstract concepts and words. And she avoids that by using words like back doors, windows, keyholes, chimneys, drafts and rattles, and best one of all is the screeching floorboards. I think that's a touch of real skill and expertise there to talk about what a poem does, but use terms that we're all completely familiar with. And that, again, we're not quite sure what she means by them, but we do get the feeling in our stomach, as she says in the first stanza, of what she means. And then there's the thing about the perfect lines. And she's talking about lines, and she has the images of the crows then as well, so we can actually see the lines. And she mentions staves, so she's talking about music lines as well as lines of poetry. So there's a lot there. And there's that line about taut enough to bear the weight of your own thoughts. So there's the pun there, I suppose, as well. And then you go into his house, the poet's house, his shadow house, which is nice. Make yourself a cup of tea, get to know him better. So you know, a good poem will draw you into the house which the poet creates. And you recognise, she goes on in the next stanza that this poet is in a sense an everyman. He's people you know. He's saying things that have resonance for yourself and for other people, your cousin, your brother, an angel. That's a nice thing to throw in. Teacher. And you give yourself over to the teacher. But of course you have to leave the poem. Because poems and songs, you know, you do have to leave them. But with the poem, something comes with you. If there's a good poem, some dust, you'll find it in the lint, the memory of everything you've learned. So a good poem leaves something. You bring something from the poem afterwards. It has some effect on you. And then it's nice at the end too, whereas the first line says shelter from the storm, she quotes the last line in each stanza. Come in, she said, I'll give you shelter from the storm. And that's nice. So well done again, Maureen, and that well deserved to be in the shortlist. The next one then is by Mary Mullen from Galway, who is here with us. And she's going to read her poem, Salmon and Assay.
Salmon and Assay. You arrive in spring after winter's hunger has made us weak. We slice your back, boil your head, eat and become sturdy, then hang strips of your flesh and your eggs in March sun. They shine flames, fennel, and garnet. We have survived another winter. You are the king. Our elders suck knowledge from your bones. We trawl for meaning while oil companies offer barbecues, wash you down with Chardonnay, groom slick lawmakers who pitch your jewels into the slime of their bottom line. Our world burns, floods, blows, while the sea change pickles us in a fishy situation. We cry for salmon intuition, but are swamped by a following sea. In our ignorant quest to become the king salmon, we spawn until we die.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, this was a striking poem as well. You know, when you read it the first time, it immediately hit you. Salmon and assay. I looked at that twice about, is that essay? No, assay. And we understand that's about testing for strength and so on. So it's a nice direct poem that speaks to us directly, and it sets up this us and salmon. And there's the continuous interaction between us and salmon. And the nice thing about it is the first two words are you arrive. The last two words are we die. So when you look at the whole poem again, when you look at it on the page, you can see that kind of thing. I like the first stanza has that feeling that this may be antiquity or in the past, possibly. It's sort of depending on the salmon. We slice your back, boil your head, eat and become stirred, and hang strips of your flesh and so on. There's precious stones or semi-precious stones, there's fennel and garnet. We have survived another winter thanks to the salmon. And then in the second stanza, it's very much the modern real world. I love that while oil companies offer barbecues. Again, that could mean a number of different things, of course. You know, barbecues as burning the world, or burning seashores, or whatever. But it could also offer, you know, it could also mean gifts and things like that. Wash you down with Chardonnay. Groom slick lawmakers. They're not popular people. And then there's a picture of jewels in the last line there. So that kind of echoes back to the last line of the first stanza, which had the garnets and the precious stones. In the second stanza, into the slime of their bottom line. And there's kind of a slant line there, which is very, very effective. Then that directness of the last stanza, our world burns, floods, blows, while the sea change puts us in this fishy situation. So there's kind of I was going to say a touch of humour there, but not really. It's very, very, very black humour if there is. But I like the directness of all that. And there's the bleakness of the rest of the poem then. We cry for salmon intuition, but are swamped by a following sea. In our ignorant quest to become the king salmon, we spawn until we die. That's very deep, spawning until we die. It could be about lots of things. And overpopulation, that comes into my head, but it could mean lots of things, but it's very, very bleak. So that poem deservedly was in our shortlist. Right, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's 8. No, 7. There are 3 left. The next poem is going to be read by Mairead. It's The Man in Number 41, and it's also by Maurice Devitt. 2 people had 2 poems each in the short list. Patrick Cotter, first 2, and Maurice Devitt as well. And this is Maurice's second one.
The man in number 41 lives in the fear of self-service shops, checks his pockets as he leaves for contraband and unwanted gifts, planted in the crush of the salad counter. Is suspicious of umbrellas, since he read of the Bulgarian spy stabbed in the knee on Westminster Bridge, or the cathedral of the same name. No matter, he knows what could happen to anyone at any time. Loves the oily innocence of fairgrounds, the beards of candy floss, the sawn-off option of the rifle range. But afraid he might find himself rocking at the top of a Ferris wheel, waiting for others to board, only to remember he has left the iron plugged in, candles burning, and knowing that the neighbour 2 doors down, the only one with the key, will be caught up in the vortex of her daughter's ballet. Phone snapped silent, he would call his home number, be reassured to hear it ring, surprised when it answered, his voice coughing down the line.
Yes, this is a surprising poem. This was, to me, was very surprising, very strange, very difficult to understand in the sense of understanding, but very impressive at the same time. The man in number 41, like we're all interested in the man in number 41, aren't we? You know, in modern suburbia where you don't really know much about people, you see him coming and going, you're just interested about it. So we're told about it. The man in number 41 lives in the fear of self-service shops. He runs the title into the first line, and that's a nice thing to do now and then. And this strange man is checking his pockets. He's afraid. He's nervous. Maybe he has a reason to be nervous, or maybe he's just like that. And there's the Bulgarian spy brought in. Strange things brought in here. There's that sense of unease. We're not sure about it. And then it says no matter. So it says stop. You kind of don't be thinking about that. And it starts then on a very, very long 1-sentence section, which goes on for 3, 6, 9, 12, the rest of the poem, about 17 lines, which is one long sentence, carefully constructed with a few commas, not overdone. So that's nice, because that's not easy to do. No matter, he knows it could happen to anyone at any time. And then he goes off to the fairground, the beards of candy floss, which I thought was a very nice touch. The sawn-off option at the rifle range. You know, all these things have menace, they're humorous, but they also have menace in them. We don't really know. And then the Ferris wheel. Then he thinks, he remembers that he left the iron plugged in and candles burning. And then he knows there's a neighbour 2 doors down who has a key, which makes me wonder, like, why has she the key? And it is a she, because he mentions her daughter with ballet. So it's a woman 2 doors down who has his key to his house. Now, there's no more than that said. But this woman at the moment is caught up in the vortex of her daughter's ballet. You know, I think there's great humour in that. It's Saturday today, you know, and there's ballet on all over the country, or Irish dancing, RGA or whatever, and they're all caught up in the vortex of this. Vortex is a very unusual word. You'd say, don't use that word there. It isn't appropriate. But when it's used, it does have an effect. Then he rings his home number, and he's surprised when he hears his voice coughing down the line. Well, if he's on the if it's an answering machine, then well maybe that's what he means. But I don't think so. I think we're meant to feel very uneasy here. While he's at the fairground, he's also at home, coughing on the line, or someone who sounds like one. But who knows? It's not a poem that you can explain easily, but it's a poem that you go back to and read again and again, and get a little bit more from each time. So that's the man in number 41, and it's by Mark Step. 2 left then. The next one is The Pitcairn Boat by Giles Newington from Dublin, who isn't here. And I'm going to read this. And before I read it, I should say that when you look at this on the page, you think, ooh, there's a lot of words there. I hope this guy, chose all his words carefully, because he's got so many of them. And the other thing you notice about it when you look carefully is it's one sentence. There's one full stop at the end of the whole thing. So you think, he had better as well. And I don't think it's an easy one to read, but I'll read it. The Pitcairn Boat. As a child, I wanted to float my Pitcairn boat in the bath or the lake in the London park where my mum's ashes ended up, and which once carried off my football signed by Jimmy Greaves when I got distracted trying to look through an actor's glass eye that my dad also gave me. He was good at souvenirs. After his return from the Pacific, with woven fans and Polynesian grass skirt for my sister, hula hit singles for my disappointed mum, plus footage from the film he'd made of island men, watched by rugged wives in print dresses, dragging a longboat down a steep ramp to the launching place, and hurling themselves at the penned-in turbulence of Bounty Bay, where in 1790 mutineers torched their ship and without delay set about dying and killing each other, embracing oblivion in a rush of rage and jealousy and madness, stirred by home brew distilled from the alien vegetation, until there was only one man left alive, a soberer murderer among the kidnapped Tahitian women and their children, as well as other pictures of my dad himself, lying on some outlaw grave, strangely bearded, grinning with eyes closed at a hovering, dark-fringed beauty from his crew, raising a bottle from the crates of beer he'd smuggled, or so the story went, onto the dry island, which all gave me the odd sensation of soundless pushing at a coffin lid, the no-blow stillness of boxed-up ashes, a barricade against the life above, a girl left scowling at the top of stairs, a workplace chair shoved back for good, an airbag of silence inflated between a crash test dummy and a shattered screen, an exile chosen on a newly named but wrongly mapped volcanic fingertip, poking out of the ocean under a dead weight of evening sky, over closed eyes of blind dwellings, from which no bridge will ever lead to the previous world, where my dad's ghost did eventually materialize, bringing me home a wooden boat, carved by an islander, tall-masted, rigged with cloudy sails, equipped with pulleys, hoops, a dozen tapering oars, a white-painted hull, no ordinary bit of tat, delivered with his mimicry of the secretive Pitcairn dialect that I can still hear, with him long gone, and the island once again unmanned by violence and scandal, where hardly a soul remains now to launch the craft, though my replica stands watch on its plinth in Dublin, discoloured, dust seasoned, obsolescent, otherwise as good as new. As I say, when you look at it on the page, you think, no, there's just too many words, and why doesn't it punctuate? There is punctuation in the sense of commas and so on, but all one long sentence. And it just about works. I think it works. And that's the reason why we put it in the shortlist. I mean, what can you say about it? It's, the Jimmy Greaves at the beginning dates it, in a sense. And it's about his dad, and it's very much about his dad. And if you go through it carefully, you can get the idea, the full story almost of this dad. Not a very good dad, I think. That my disappointed mum is a lovely adjective to use in that second stanza. I love the way that at the end of the first stanza, where we've heard about this pig-carrying boat, which fascinates us, but suddenly it switches to dad. He mentions the actor's glass eye, which my dad also gave. So we know then that he gave him the pig-carrying boat as well, and there's more about that later on. And that thing about he was good at souvenirs, that's a damn thing to say about a man, isn't it? Yeah. Or a woman, or anybody. They were good at souvenirs. So there's a whole backstory behind that, which we, to be fair, we more or less get here. It's hard to say much more about it. There's the girl left scowling at the top of the stairs. The workplace chair shoved back for good. So we get a picture of this man who just basically abandons and heads off to the South Seas to Pitcairn Island. And there's great description then of, say, the boat, tall mass of written cloudy sails, and so on. And the whole poem shows a remarkable control of the narrative. Minimum punctuation, which still manages to work. And it's lucid and readable. And it does make some kind of sense. And it's, to me, it's a tour de force. So that's the reason why the Pitcairn Boat by Giles Newington made our shortlist. And then there's one left for the shortlist, and this is last in the shortlist because it begins with W. Wisdom of the Origamist by Armel Daghorn, who is French and living in France. He did spend quite an amount of time in Ireland previously, and I know we published him with Wine Berries, and he entered on a shortlist in a competition with Trim as well. So he's well known, but he is in France at the moment, and unfortunately can't be here.